Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and I'm so excited today to be joined by the wonderful Lauren Ambrose to talk about the latest series of Apple TV Plus's Servant. And I was actually really interested in the way that you found this character in your performance when the show first started, because it's such a unique tone to take these characters and to have the genre setting, and it comes in so many elements from the camera motion to the tone that we're feeling throughout the show. And I feel like performance-wise, watching your performance in the show, you have to make such strong choices and such strong convictions for this character. And particularly when you were
Mm.
introducing us, was very interested in how you found that initial voice and tone and conviction for this character in your performance.
Well, yeah, it was like a puzzle to that I needed to figure out. I was given the script and it's this half hour. Um, uh, I never worked in the genre before, but it was obviously, I don't know, like both the writing, the character, the circumstances, and this woman who thinks a doll is her baby, and a woman who is so traumatized by grief and so that she's literally unable to even see or perceive at all what happened. I mean, that's a level of denial that's just so wild. So I'm like, okay, how do I even attempt to make this a kind of realish person? And I don't know. I guess I mean I was just coming off of doing My Fair Lady on Broadway, and that was obviously theatrical, and then this felt like a theatrical person. So I guess that was helpful. Um, um, she wears. I just thought of it in terms of like masks. Like she wears masks, so she wears a lot of makeup, and she's a news reporter, so she's out. She's got this like persona, work persona, and then I guess the mask of trying to hold her life together and keep these secrets buried. And then what's interesting to me, of course, is like the moments that the mask cracks a little bit and you see maybe what's under it, or some truth that her body knows or that her psyche knows that she's not even consciously aware of, I guess. So but really it's that was just the fun. Yeah, and it's working with the other actors and working with the other creative people to make the feeling.
And
That's
her
the main thing.
Yeah. And her job in news reporting on a local station is such a fantastic element because there's so many moments where it's interspersed throughout the series. So we really get to see so many different instances of your character out in the field reporting on different things. But also it carries through into her home life in certain moments, when she has a parent and baby group come to the house and then everybody's running out
Yeah,
screaming because of something that happens. She's still there kind of like trying to hold court and trying to bring everybody back together almost. And so there's
yeah.
moments where the voice and persona that she has on the air also comes into her personal life and her interactions with others. And so, how did you find that very specific persona that you wanted her to have? Did it involve kind of looking at other field reporters and looking at local news stations and really finding, the essence of that?
Yeah, I mean, initially I did get to go over to the local news station in Philly and meet some reporters, and I watched some newscasts and stuff, and that's really helpful and great. And I don't know, for Dorothy though, I kind of think of her as like this type A personality person who refuses to fail at something, and she has this huge, what she would perceive as a failure, in that it's like when you're a parent, you're like, don't break the baby, don't break the baby. It's like she broke the baby. Like it's she would definitely see it as her own failure. And here's a person who's basically only interested in what the outside world sees and thinks and appearances. So I guess just thinking of that, of like holding the painting of it all together, holding the visage, the thing that the party, or the wanting it to look like Instagram right, or whatever, wanting it to look like the magazine shoot at all times, like every element of her life, even though that's definitely not the case, and things are literally crumbling around her. So, I mean, that's, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's something that we're all do. I do that sometimes in certain ways in my life. So, it's just like amping that little nasty. So I've got these like cats literally running through the house right now, chasing each other. But so that's my version of it. Like, I'm letting you in on the animals that are doing some kind of race through the house that you'd never know about. Yeah.
Did you find that costumes were a really helpful element with that very kind of A-type and the
100%.
way that she really wants to present herself to the world? Because she's incredibly immaculately dressed, and even down to the point when she's just at home with her husband and with
Yeah.
Leanne, she's still presenting herself a lot of time, even within her own home, which I thought was an interesting aspect visually.
Yeah, I do too, and including the set design and the decor and the this beautiful brownstone, everything is just immaculate. I think it's interesting that we never see a housekeeper or a cleaner or anything, and everything is so pristine. They can't really let the boys who are keeping all these secrets from my character, they can't really let anybody into the house other than Leanne, the nanny. So there's not really a lot of people coming through, but somehow this place is completely meticulous at all times, even though they're in like absolute chaos at all times. Yeah, the set design, the costumes. I mean, that's what I was saying. It's like it's such a collaboration, and that's really what makes my job both fun and interesting. And what I like the most about being an actor is like you collaborate with other creative people who are working, bringing forth their artistry. And Caroline Duncan is really so talented, and she's created all like patterns on patterns and this very baroque palette and sensibility, and everybody's costumes seem to evolve in a really interesting way, and I think it lends that sort of heightened element. I mean, nobody could ever achieve that kind of gorgeous fashion. I don't know, maybe they could, but I don't know anybody who can. But everything is pretty meticulous. Yeah, I mean, that was another thing. It's like you go like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this job because this is such a wacky character, and then put on some clothes and shoes in particular, and you're like, oh, okay, got it. Put on those silk pajamas, and you're like, oh, right, this is the person who would wear the silk pajamas that you see, advertised to you, but no, who would ever buy?
With
She's
that
got
idea,
80 pairs.
in terms of collaboration, I also wanted to ask about the collaboration with the different directors that come into the series, and particularly the camera department, because the show is shot so cinematically and exquisitely in terms of the angles that it uses, the placement and the movement. And it's not necessarily a traditional, getting the two shot, getting the over the shoulder, getting the wide shot. And so does that kind of create more of an awareness of what the camera's doing in terms of kind of like knowing where the placement's going to be, or does it open up a different type of freedom because you're not playing to the traditional coverage?
Yes, definitely not playing to the traditional coverage. That's true. And there's really nothing traditional about the way this show is made or shot. The directors and all of us are encouraged to think about it cinematically, and I think that has to do with the genre as well, creating tension that way. Um, and probably like emulating Knight's style, M Night Shyamalan's style in his films. He's very specific about how he storyboards everything and plans out these long shots. And so, I mean, again, like that could be some of the most fun. Actually, I think there was a scene that I'm thinking of in particular where we were in the kitchen this past season that's coming out, and it was like a long one shot with, there was a special effects element, there was food being made, being cooked, there was a baby like that I had strapped to me or putting somewhere, feeding, whatever. There's like there was only four of us, but there, all the actors were in the scene. The camera's moving around doing this crazy move, and it was going to be one shot. And that was it. That was the whole coverage for like a 3 or 4 page scene or something like that. Everybody was living in fear, and everybody was like, stressed. And then after we did it a few times, it was like, this is the best. This is what we're all here to do. This is the absolute best, where everybody's bringing their work and bringing their best energy, and the focus pullers like sweating, and everybody's got to hit their mark perfectly. And that was an extreme example. And we definitely celebrated when that was accomplished. That was an extreme example, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty fun to have, I don't know, to learn about new camera doodads that I've never worked with before. There was something called a mirror lens, where I can look directly into the camera, basically. And because there's a prism and a mirror in it, I can see the other actor who's nearby, near the camera, but I'm looking directly in the lens, but I'm still seeing you. So, and that's a little bit of a mind trick to get used to. And that, and also the camera's like right here. But they're always pulling out stuff like that. And yeah, and it becomes sort of a dance and a collaboration with the directors and the whoever's shooting that episode. But it's pretty fun.
And in looking to the space that your character is coming into this season in, it's really exciting to get to see her being so kind of carefree and joyful at the beginning of the season. Obviously, it's Servant, so we know that won't last. But I was interested in how that really opened up a different space for you to play to, and then kind of reaching that point where everything that she wanted in season 2, which was her son to be returned to her, all of a sudden she's starting to face this realization that that's not enough to fulfill her, and she does need other things. And so as she starts to feel that her career is being pulled away from her, that kind of becomes a fear that's coming into her, and the way that there's always some sort of psychological fear, even when we're meeting her at a place of optimism. And so how did that really open up a different space for you to be able to play to within this season?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember all those little beats along the way. It's true, I guess it gets to a pretty heightened place with between the nanny and the mama, and they're fighting over who knows best for the child, and who has his best interest at heart. And that's maybe that's just a struggle on an extreme level for any working mother, and anybody who's has to allow anybody into the kid's life. Yeah, there were some really funny episodes and funny moments, and lighter moments. And I was relieved after the sort of depths of the horror that we went to and the previous season, that there was a sort of lightness and fun for the character, which of course it doesn't last, as you said. And then it kind of gets into this existential struggle battle over the kid's spirit, and the kid's best interests. And and then it gets like, and then she's also fighting for her sorry, it's kind of hard to remember all these little things, but she's like I had to sort of fight for my sanity, like what I actually know. And that was interesting, because as her mental state seemed to unravel to the people around her and got worse, she was actually getting clearer and clearer about what needs to happen in the house and in her own house. And so, and therefore, like, hopefully getting clearer and clearer to the truth of what she needs to face in her life, is that there was this trauma that has never been faced. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers what you were talking about. But.
I also wanted to talk a little bit about the relationship at this point between Dorothy and Leanne, because when you look back to the beginning of the first season, they're in such a different place with one another. You know, Leanne is
Mm,
in this place where she feels like Dorothy is a mother figure to her, and she does feel like part of the family. And you know, it feels reciprocal from Dorothy's end, but there's also the interesting aspect where it feels like Dorothy's almost trying to mold her into, you know, a certain version, help her come out of her shell, but also kind of mold her a little bit. And so, what was that kind of interesting, slight familial bond that you wanted to capture between the two of them? That is in part what leads to the two of them butting heads a little bit as they're both trying to
mhm.
parent the child together as well.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, it just meant that there were some really lovely scenes between me and Nell Tiger Free, who plays Leanne. She's a beautiful young actress and lovely actor, lovely person. We had some interesting moments to play. Sort of, there were these mother-daughter feelings, and that evolved. I mean, I have an actual teenager at home, so that felt familiar, and I could tap into that, the sort of this strong will, coming up against the strong teenage will of this person realizing they have power, um, which on our show is an extreme version because she has lots of other weird powers. But uh, yeah, that was there were some lovely scenes there.
You also get to continue exploring loads of great moments with Rupert Grint, who plays your brother Julian in the show. You know, and I was interested in how the two of you consistently find these moments that really just harken back to, you know, their relationship, their chemistry, the fact that they've known each other their entire lives, and sometimes it's the way that they show up for one another. You know, she shows up for Julian just as much as he shows up for her, and everything that he's doing to concoct this world and version of events for her. But again, there's more kind of like moments of levity, like when he shows up and she bursts into song and dance, and he immediately joins in because this is something that they've
Yeah,
clearly done thousands of times before, even if they haven't done it recently.
yeah, yeah. And those scenes are always lovely. Rupert's really just a beautiful actor, and brings this sort of tenderness to this wild character that he's playing. I don't know, I always think about, yeah, family history, how we're physical with each other in a different way from how I'd be physical with the other characters. Um, yeah, there've been some scenes throughout the show that have sort of helped us build that vocabulary, and that now we can, now there's a more of a shorthand. So, and that's of course the beauty of having a long time to play these characters over seasons is, you sort of closer to, I always think it's like closer to whatever the group theater experience would have been, because you have a company. And in our case, it's a small company of actors, and now we know each other. They're all really lovely people, and they're all really striving good actors, and then the writers are writing to us, and we have a shared history as the characters and as people. So yeah, so the that informs these scenes. And I guess I'm feeling wistful because we're headed in a couple of weeks to start, or not even a couple, soon, to start shooting season 4, which is the final season. And just feeling really grateful to have had and continue to have this time to, you know to use those things that just like come out of your body, like to with a family member, this shared history. So that's kind of a fun and rare gift as an actor. When you're on these series, you always think it's like, oh, okay, this is it now. Like this is just forever, and then you're sort of cast back into like figuring out what the next gig is going to be, and you're like, oh, that was special. That was rare. So
I love that idea and that description of it being like a company, and especially because it is so few of you, because these characters, like you said earlier, can't let anybody else from the outside into the house.
Yeah.
And with last season, with everything with COVID as well, I know that that actually helped you to keep filming, and because it was easier to create a bubble because there's so few of you within the storyline, and you were all living together as well, I believe.
Yeah.
And so, did that really create an even further level of intimacy and shorthand that you have in working on scenes together because of the way that you spent that time together last season differently?
Yeah, it was actually 2 rounds of being in a bubble with one another for 6 weeks at a time. And we weren't literally living like in the real world, like in the house all together, but we were, but I mean, in a sense, because you spend, 18 hours or whatever it is on set. But so you feel like you really, and that's your only social interaction too. Um, yeah, it was really pretty intense. Um, yeah, and certainly this show has some themes running through it that apply to everybody's current situation of like being stuck in, it's like this little family stuck in a house together, and it's like the walls are going to blow. um yeah, I know, I can't believe that we actually got to continue working. There's so many actors I know who were unable to work and unable to do that, and they, they did a great job of like testing and zoning and all the things, and of course it took a little bit of bravery, especially at the beginning, to like be the people who take off the masks, and it's a pretty vulnerable feeling. But yeah, we were able to work, and a lot of people were able to work, a lot of crew members and everything. It's a small cast, but it's still a big company of people working, so
Yeah.
it was extraordinary, a weird experience for sure.
Yeah, but great that it was able to continue because of it being a smaller cast. And kind of jumping back
Yeah.
to kind of the other primary relationship that Dorothy has in the show is obviously her marriage with Sean. And what's interesting in watching this dynamic between the two of them is that it's very real. There's moments where they're incredibly connected to one another. They both go so far for each other, and yet there's also moments where we do get to see the cracks in their relationship, and whether it's through the flashback moments that we had last season where we were getting to
Mm.
see some of the instances that led up to what had happened to their child, or even this season as well, there's already kind of those instances of cracks in the relationship. But so it's almost like this dance where they're kind of like splintering apart and coming back together so continuously throughout the season. And almost the more adversity they face, the more they come together a lot of the time.
Hmm.
And do the scripts really dictate for you what that space needs to be between them in terms of their intimacy and their connection, as you and Toby Kebbell really find those beats within the relationship dynamic?
Yeah, certainly. It's we're don't necessarily know where those ebbs and waxing and waning of the relationships are gonna come. So we, go with what we're given, and find our way. Um, yeah. Again, it's, figuring out physically, and um, just trying to hold on to the thing of that there's this betrayal that's in the air at all times for those two, that they're just not facing the reality. He's not telling her, he's not letting her in, he's letting her be in the dark with this grief and this trauma. um she's this is probably a pretty difficult person to be married to, just to really um I don't know. I think that at our best moments, it's sort of like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, um where they can treat each other just so badly sometimes, but we can come back to that there's some kind of solid foundation that they're on, or maybe just because of the shared history. I don't know. It's just it's almost like a manual of what not to do in any relationship. the show, and especially that relationship. I don't know.
And jumping back to earlier when you were mentioning how you came onto this show off the back of My Fair Lady, I was interested in terms of both the physical and the mental stamina, and if there's similar kind of tools or similar skills that it requires of you. You know, doing 8 shows a week is obviously incredibly strenuous in one way, and then working on a show like
Mm.
this and showing up and being in all these scenes and the physicality of the show as well at a lot of the times also has kind of a different physical and emotional stamina. But are there kind of like through lines in terms of the tools that it requires from you for both of those scenarios?
Um, yeah, sure. I mean, both are have their challenges for sure. She's again like pretty big theatrical character, so I feel like using my voice in a bigger way than maybe I would with other modern characters in film as a part of it. So warm up my voice every day and physically warm up every day and uh, yeah. I thought it was kind of a good. I think it was a good warm up to the character to have that incredibly physically demanding and exhausting job because she's been through a lot and also has the ability to be big. So a good preamble to this job.
That's so great to hear. Well, congratulations on everything with this season so far. I've only seen the first half, but I'm completely enthralled as always. So thank you so much for
Oh,
talking about it all, Lauren. Really appreciate it.
thanks, Mara. My pleasure.